with Pacific Western Airlines.
All the way to Toronto.
We spread our wings across the west.
Hey man, this Halloween, think California. You can win 2 weeks there and ride a wild roller coaster in Roundtree's California Thriller Contest. Details are on all Roundtree Halloween packs of Coffee Crisp, Smarties, Arrow, Kit Kat, and Mirage. Imagine you're on the coaster, you understand? You hit the big loop and then zap! You're 15 stories straight up and stop. Now do it all again. Backwards. Stay cool. Roundtree California Thriller Contest. It's some trip.
BCTV, together we'll have the best year yet.
Good morning. A very serious face this morning because the moment of truth is coming for 25% of the adult population of British Columbia. And one of those 25% is none other than Jim Nielsen, the Minister of Health in British Columbia. Other people could be affected. We're going to tackle that, and we're going to tackle the hospital problems and the health ministry problems generally in BC with the Minister. Now, seeing we're on this kick this morning, we're also going to discuss a potential devastating crisis for many societies in British Columbia, such as the Red Cross and such as the Arthritis Society, because there's a test case to arbitration going on just now in which the union is claiming that the volunteers are taking away what should be properly paid union jobs, and they're deadly serious. They want to diminish the work and the effect of volunteers who supply thousands of services in our hospital facilities in British Columbia. But we'll start for the crisis that faces Jim Nielsen and God knows how many hundreds of thousands of others in British Columbia after the break. Jim Nielsen is Minister of Health, and he's not a very... Jim Nielsen is Minister of Health, and I might as well tell you he's a very poor example of how to look after your health. Are you still smoking?
I'm still smoking, yes, same as you.
I'm not the Minister of Health, with respect. How much are you smoking?
I'm smoking too much.
How many packs a day are you smoking, said he, with respect, deference, humility?
I don't count the packs anymore, Jack. I buy it by the carton.
$20 a carton?
Very near, yes.
Are you going to stop smoking?
Yes, eventually.
When? When it kills you?
No, I've quit several times.
Are you in favor of the Blatherwick plan? I'm deadly serious. I'm just slightly hysterical because of my own hypocrisy. Are you in favor, and I'm deadly serious, of outlawing smoking in offices, banks, the provincial government offices, airport terminals, all government buildings, hotel lobbies, department stores, and bus terminals?
No, I'm not in favor of that, but if a private office building wishes to have that policy, they can do that. If a municipality wishes to have anti-smoking bylaws, they can do that, regional districts. If a government office wishes to impose that, they can certainly do it. There's no need for legislation. It's up to an organization or a group of people to make that decision. There's no problem there. You can prohibit smoking in hospitals. You can prohibit smoking in public buildings. Some municipalities have brought bylaws forward to do just that, restaurants and so on. But I don't think society would put up with it right now, perhaps in another decade.
You do not advocate such bylaws?
I approve them. The ones which have come across my desk have been approved by myself, so I approve them. If it's passed at the municipal level, I'll approve it. Requires the Minister of Health signature to become law, so I have no hesitation in approving that.
Even though you are a dyed-in-the-wool, permanent smoker, you will approve any properly passed bylaws in any public places which require your approval?
Certainly.
But you don't advocate it?
I don't advocate it as a legislative measure. I think it's not necessarily heavy by government. I think it's up to people to make that decision.
Do you believe this stuff that secondhand smoke causes cancer?
I think secondhand smoke probably irritates seriously people who are suffering from some type of respiratory problem. I'm not sure if it causes cancer.
I really did this for my own benefit this morning as well as your benefit, because I am the world's worst smoker, as you're well aware.
I look at you as a standard, though, Jack. You're 20 years older than me, and I figure if you're hanging on in such great shape despite smoking, there's hope for me yet. And if I quit early, I'll look that much better when I reach your age. If that's possible.
Okay, enough of that. I did that quite seriously this morning, though, because you and I, we will both obey the law, won't we?
Certainly.
If they ban smoking on BC TV, I won't smoke in this building, will I?
Or you won't work here.
If that's a condition of employment.
Sure.
But they must tell me that before they hire me.
We have a small controversy occurring at ICBC on the non-smoking, which they imposed. Employees wanted that. The Ministry of Health building some time back had decisions with respect to smoking, Victoria. So.
Well, we'll leave it at that. We're both kind of lackluster about it. Take a break and we'll get down to more practical business. Take it right now. Mr. Nielsen and the provincial government have approved the lifting of the freeze on hospital construction. First of all, does this mean we're round the corner on restraint and can look forward to a lot of these closed beds being opened and some of the missing staff rehired in the hospital system in British Columbia?
Well, the two aren't related, Jack. The operating budget is quite separate from the capital budget. These programs we've announced lately, the capital projects, have been in stream for 5 years on our 5-year program. Many of them are replacement facilities, others are new, but it doesn't relate directly to the operation of the existing hospitals.
We're talking about the $700 million you've apparently freed for capital construction.
No, $700 million is the total of requests we have in our department now from around the province. About 59 projects total approximately $700 million. They're not all to be approved now. That's all part of the 5-year plan.
How many are you going to approve now in the foreseeable next year, for instance, of the $700 million? How much in terms of capital borrowing?
Probably about $125 million.
Have you got a priority for these places? Where will that money be spent, if I may ask?
Well, we have a priority. The first priority was a couple of months back when I announced approval for the construction of the Victoria Cancer Clinic. That was the #1 priority. We then gave permission for a psychiatric unit at Kamloops. In northern BC at Mackenzie, they had a temporary hospital which was constructed about 15 years ago, made up of module units. So we gave approval to replace that temporary structure with a permanent hospital in Mackenzie. In the Fraser Valley, we gave approval for the rebuilding of the Chilliwack Hospital and Langley Hospital. Recently, last week I guess it was, we gave approval for a 150-bed extended care unit in Nanaimo. I think it was last week as well, or the week previous, gave permission for Royal Columbian Hospital to go ahead with its expanded emergency ward. And there's been others last week in the Caribou. Williams Lake and 100 Mile House were given authority to go ahead with extended care.
What about the complaint, I think it was from Eileen Daly, that there was a preponderance of construction and social credit ridings and a kind of obvious mismatch with the needs of NDP ridings?
Well, ridings don't belong to political parties nor do hospitals. They belong to the citizens of the province and the people within those constituencies. Royal Columbian Hospital is a very good example. The emergency ward serves citizens in the province from Hope to the sea. It's nothing to do with being NDP, nor is Nanaimo Extended Care. We don't ask people for a political card when they go in a hospital.
So it's political, it's petty picayune complaints.
Well, it's worse than that. It's probably embarrassing for Eileen to make such a statement. As I said, the first announcement was the Victoria Cancer Clinic, and I didn't hear anyone complaining that it was in a constituency represented by the NDP.
Fair enough, that's your priorities. Now, we do know there are many closed beds in British Columbia hospitals. Eagle Ridge is a good example where somebody came up with this bed and breakfast and empty hospital rooms. Was that your idea?
No.
Whose idea was it?
It wasn't anyone's idea.
What was it then?
I think it was a momentary thought of someone who was not authorized to do anything. I think it was someone's legitimate thought that perhaps during Expo there could be the availability of space for handicapped people. And someone asked if that would be feasible. And then your friend Bob Skelly apparently repeated the idea up in the interior in the Kootenays, and made it sound as though it actually had been proposed. This was his big scoop of the year, I guess. Eileen Daly addressed a letter to me I received yesterday in Victoria saying that their party was absolutely opposed to that, so I responded. I haven't signed the letter yet, but I responded. I just said, Eileen, you know better than that. You're just being silly, and your leader is trying to get a few inches of column space in a newspaper somewhere. But the idea, if you think about it, is so silly that it's really not worthy of even answering.
It does raise one point, though, all the empty beds in Eagle Ridge.
No, they're not all empty beds in Eagle Ridge. Eagle Ridge was opened. It's being, it will be expanded as we go along. It was opened at a certain level. All well planned, well understood, and no complaints from the board responsible for the hospital at all. If you go out to Eagle Ridge, you'll find a large space that is in shell stage, just empty space, because the hospital was built for the future, and it will be opened in stages.
Now, we talked about your capital expenditures, for which you're probably going to spend $100 million the next year. That's capital borrowing.
Yeah, a little more than that, probably.
How much do you spend in the health department altogether in a year? What's your budget nowadays?
$3.2 billion.
$3.2 billion.
$100 a second. They're costing us a lot of money. Every second goes by.
Are you planning to increase the operational budgets for the hospitals who are constantly complaining about lack of staff and cutbacks?
Jack, that's incorrect. The hospitals...
They are complaining.
No, they're not. They're not complaining.
I'm crazy.
Jack, you're not crazy either. They're not complaining. Most hospitals are doing very, very well with budgets, for operating budgets. We have a program where the ministry reviews all hospitals on a quarterly basis. And if their workload has exceeded what was anticipated and they're short of funds, we make modifications to their budget. But you have very few complaints. In fact, none of your clippings here probably indicate a complaint from a hospital about operating costs this year.
If I open the phone and get the right people, I'd probably get thousands of them. What about the costs?
No, not from those who are responsible for budget.
What about the costs of, for instance, your emergency treatment for AIDS, which is costing a fortune, is it not?
It's costing a fair amount of money.
How much is it costing?
Oh,
100,000 a patient?
If an AIDS patient, the treatment required for an AIDS patient would average about $120,000 for that period of time. That's about the average cost of an acute care bed per year, about $120,000.
Any hospital, therefore, which is, it's more than just the cost of an acute care bed.
No, I say it is equal to about the cost of acute care bed.
Any hospital, therefore, which is caring for AIDS patients will be able to get their additional expenditures for whatever, as long as they have AIDS patients in the hospitals.
That's part of the blend of their cost of operating a hospital. Jack, AIDS is a disease like any other disease, and it's going to be covered in the payments. But hospitals are doing very, very well.
Kind of terrifying disease, apart from that.
AIDS is one of the most serious problems we have medically today.
Are you able to cope with it health-wise in British Columbia?
We have no choice. We'll have to. There's a tremendous amount of research being undertaken around the world. It has to be done. AIDS is very, very serious, and the money needed to treat the disease, research it or whatever, must be made available.
I refuse to believe some of the predicted estimates of the number of people who will get it by happenstance, but might you have to plan a separate hospital for AIDS cases? Separate isolation hospital for AIDS cases?
If the recommendations of the medical fraternity and the hospital folks and the researchers is for that, we would have to consider it. One of the more serious problems with respect to AIDS, other than it's a very serious disease, is the social implications. We don't want to create a new leper or a new type of outcast because of a disease. We learned our lesson, I think, with other communicable diseases with respect to treating people, but if the medical profession indicates it's necessary, then of course we'll have to respond.
Mind you, when I was much younger, I remember when isolation for many diseases was regarded as a matter of proper medical care. Scarlet fever, whooping cough, to some extent measles, what was the other bad one? Polio.
Sure.
So therefore that's something that probably will have to be looked at in terms of specialized care for those kind of victims.
There's no question that there have to be specialized care for people suffering from AIDS, but what that care will be is still not known because they're learning more every hour, but they certainly don't have all the answers.
I'm going to take calls to the minister. I have a few more points to give to him now that we've both agreed that we're going to try to stop smoking to be better examples in public, haven't we?
Yes.
After the break. A few short questions before I go to the phones. Have you an opinion on this attack by the unions on the volunteers in our societies, such as the Arthritis Society? Do you think that's justifiable at all, that paid jobs, say 3, can replace 20 volunteers?
I think it's absolutely essential in our society that we maintain that element of volunteerism in healthcare and in other areas for a number of reasons. I think it's an essential part of our society, but also from a financial point of view, it's completely necessary.
I noticed you last summer, you gave royal assent to the bill which now controls the number of doctors in British Columbia, despite the previous court decisions. Have you used that power yet to limit the number of doctors entering practice in British Columbia?
It's to limit the number of billing numbers issued to practicing doctors.
Same thing.
Well, not quite, but very similar. Yes, we've been using that for some months.
How many doctors have been refused the opportunity to practice under MSP?
We don't keep track of how many doctors have been refused. Rather, we keep track of how many have been permitted. And I don't know the precise number.
But you've added some?
A few.
Few. But the doctors are overpaid anyway, aren't they, Mr. Nielsen?
They're well paid.
You're coming up for negotiations again on November the 1st, and this, I think it's 2 years since they got a nickel.
No, 2 years ago they received a 4.2% increase in the fee schedule to cover overhead and a few other things. Doctors do very well in British Columbia. They are well paid. They work hard for it, but they're well paid. They're well compensated for their activity.
But now you've got control of the overall numbers, you can say, there's the pot, divide it, no more.
Well, we have, the agreement we have now has a modified capping process. We have not yet seen the results of that one-year contract, but we're eagerly awaiting the numbers. The BCMA and the ministry right now are getting along as well as you could expect any two organizations who negotiate. And give credit to the BCMA. Jerry Carr, I think, has done an excellent job as president. And we are getting along very, very well. We have resolved a tremendous number of problems that were long-standing issues. We will get down to negotiations at the end of the month, and of course that's a slightly different matter. The negotiating teams will be working. But the negotiating teams for the BCMA and the negotiating teams for the ministry spent a long weekend together in a seminar to try to learn how to better negotiate.
There was one other point I was going to raise with you. Oh yes, the Red Cross have been accused of secretly testing their screening process for AIDS prior to the general screening on November the 1st. Did they do us a disfavor by secretly testing the blood without telling us?
Well, Jack, I think if you're going to start a program such as that, you're obviously going to have to test your system. And I presume that's what they've been doing for the past couple of weeks, is testing the system so it can be in effect and effective 1st of November.
Good. Let's go.
I don't think it's terribly wrong.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack. I have three short questions for your guests this morning, and I'll be quite quick with them. The first one would be I wonder why the doctors at the Royal Columbian, they quit over, at the time I believe they were saying the equipment was shoddy and the maintenance wasn't up on their emergency wards, and they weren't able to provide the service. Another question would be, I wonder why our emergency wards have to use the shuttle bus system for patients that are basically in dire straits, and they get shuttled from one hospital to another until they find a bed open for them.
And your third point?
And my third point is, I wonder why, now the minister is saying we have all this money for the hospitals, that we've been laying off the maintenance people that are to keep the equipment that we do have on right now up to standards. And
Which hospital?
Yes, and I just seem it.
Which hospital?
Which hospital? The Royal Columbian?
Well, all of them. I know Vancouver General for sure. They've been laying off maintenance.
Okay, let's tackle the minister on that. Are they laying off maintenance people in the hospitals?
Well, I don't know, Jack. It's quite possible. Hospitals are responsible for operating their hospital. We provide the budget for them, but I haven't heard that it's a major problem.
Okay, what about...
I believe one doctor quit Royal Columbian Hospital. We don't own people if they wish to quit. I believe the doctor reapplied. Emergency shuttle bus, so-called. People perhaps don't fully appreciate that if you are injured in an emergency situation or have some kind of a problem. The number one responsibility is to get you, the patient, to the hospital that can treat you for that need. There's no point in taking a person, perhaps who has a serious head injury, to a community hospital where they don't have the neurosurgeon there. Well, obviously, you have to be transferred to where the expertise is.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I work in an operating room, and I'll tell you one thing right now, that not everybody is happy that works up there, because we're out overworked, understaffed. When somebody's off sick, they don't replace them. They make one girl do the work of 3, and that's a fact because I work there. So don't tell me, Mr. Nielsen, that everybody's happy that works in the operating room.
Well, how could a person do the work of 3?
They do.
How could they?
They certainly do.
Are you suggesting then that normally they're only working at 1/3 capacity?
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right, because we don't have much choice. Lots of times we go without breaks and everything.
No,
and I've worked there for years, and I know all about working in the operating room.
But yeah, okay, I appreciate...
Actually, when you say that everybody that works in the operating room is happy.
I didn't say that.
We're not, we're really understaffed.
Yeah,
And then when they say to bring somebody in, they say, well, we can't afford it. And then they get a pat on the back because they save the budget a few dollars. And in the meantime, everybody's breaking their backside.
Well, I haven't heard too many complaints from those who are working in the hospitals. I've heard complaints for some of those who are trying to work in the hospitals, hoping they can get a job in the hospital.
Well, that's a cry from the heart. You don't want to tell us which hospital, do you?
Well, it doesn't really matter. I mean...
Well, you only work in one, ma'am.
Right. I work in an operating room.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
The operating room nurses, of course, do have a very difficult job, and there's a tremendous amount of pressure.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please. Oh, can't go ahead in that one. I took the wrong one. My fault. Go ahead from Prince George.
Yes, Mr. Nielsen.
Yes.
The last couple of years, your government has been in power there. Is it now building all these hospitals and spending the money around the province on that? Has this got anything to do with an upcoming election?
Now, we were spending $100 million a year approximately from 1978 on capital construction to rebuild the hospital system in the province. The program was halted for 2 years during the height of the recession. We have now seen some turnaround in the economy, and we're beginning to release some of the projects which were in the 5-year plan.
Thank you. It's hardly enough to encourage your supporters in an election.
That's not that much money when you consider it, Jack.
No. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning.
That's you.
In 1978, your government introduced the long-term care in British Columbia.
Correct.
Well, it's finally caught up with us, and we had to put our 90-year-old mother in, and we're very pleased. We're getting fantastic service, and it's a fantastic long-term care hospital, and I want to thank you very much.
Very kind. It is an excellent program.
I had a friend of mine on the phone just now who's had the entire other side of the coin. Yeah. We're highly unsatisfied with the long-term care. Had to bring the patient home at incredible cost and devotion. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to ask what's happening to George Derby Center, whether the money's being released this year or next year, and when the actual building is going to start.
Oh my, I'm sorry, I don't have the precise information. That is the Veterans Hospital. I don't know, ma'am. I'd have to check the file to see what dates are involved. I'm sorry, I just don't have that information.
Is that the old federal one, George Derby Veterans?
It is a combination. It is, it's a new building that will be on the George Derby lands. I just don't have the dates or information, I'm sorry.
What's it for, one question?
It basically for veterans for long-term care.
Thank you. More with Jim Nielsen after the break. Go ahead to Jim Nielsen, Minister of Health.
Hi, Jack. I'm going back to what you were talking about, the smoking and banning it in public places. And I think that it's just totally asinine, because when you think about it, on all these cars going around, people are inhaling this diesel fume, et cetera, I mean, what are they going to do, start banning these from certain roads?
And don't forget, God forgot to take out a pollution permit when he blew up Mount St. Helens.
Well, I don't know. I just think it's a little bit crazy, because...
No. It's stupid to smoke and put the stuff straight into your lungs. Isn't it, Jimmy?
Absolutely.
No, we've got to present the right public attitude.
That's correct.
No, I can't go for that. What's the next one? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, my question is, I arrived at Royal Columbian in an emergency situation, and I was given a doctor, and I had no idea of what kind of performance this doctor put out, whether he was a good doctor or a bad doctor, or he was just, you know.
What did you want? A panel of doctors to choose from when you got there?
I would like to have some kind of indication of this, the doctor's performance. It'd be very simple to put when the person's released. Were they satisfied with their doctor or unsatisfied? A check in either box, and that would give some kind of a rating for people to. They just have to put their faith in whatever. Right now, there's just no way to
James, you
that.
take it. Please answer this question, James.
Well, you must realize that the doctor who treated you is licensed, obviously competent, working in an emergency ward at Royal Columbian Hospital. I think you have to accept that you probably received the best treatment possible, and popularity amongst doctors is not something we're seeking.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, was I wonder if Jim Nielsen could explain why they keep putting this business through that old age pensioners and extended care units get $140 spending money a month. This is an absolute lie.
I've never said $140 about anybody.
Well, I have a clipping from the last time you were in the paper, and it says that the charge is set at 3/4 of the full AOS GIS payment.
That's correct.
Nielsen said this news release, this provides a pensioner an extended care hospital or continuing care home with at least $140 a month for personal use after their food, accommodation, and care needs are met. This is an absolute lie.
What is the old age pension in GIS now? What's the total?
Well, I don't know about the GIS, but I'm talking about an old age pensioner. My wife, I'm paying $457 a month for her.
Yeah.
And she gets $280 old age pension.
Yeah.
There's $177 difference that I have to pay out of my own pocket.
Obviously, you're in a position to be able to do that.
Well, that's fine, but why don't you say that? Why don't you say that some people are also paying $177 extra?
Well, some people are paying the whole shot if they're not an old age pension or GIS. That's not what it's based on. It's based on a percentage of the old age pension in GIS.
Yes, most people don't even know what the old age pension and GIS means.
And most people wouldn't be concerned, sir, unless they have a person in such an institution, or if they're in there themselves and they would know the details.
Let me understand it. If I am an old age pensioner on OAS and GIS, which comes to $600 odd a month, I will have, after my deductions for my care, I'll get how much of what percentage of my $650?
You would be paying approximately 78% of your combination
of
OAS,
my care.
GIS. Yep. No. 78% of the total pension. Of the pension
would go to my care.
That's right.
There was a rate at one time, I'm out of date in this, and I shouldn't be, whereby it was so much per day maximum for an extended care hospital. Remember, it used to be $6 a day. Then it went up, did it not? Is it a flat rate for people?
Flat rate for...
everyone in extended care?
Yes, everyone in extended care, long-term care.
Everyone, regardless of income in BC in long-term care, gets a subsidized rate?
There is an income test that's so far up that it affects very, very few people. I'm not sure if it's ever implemented.
But if it's an OAS and GIS only, they get 140.
If that's the balance of the residue.
This man's wife only has OAS, Old Age Security. Mm-hmm. He gets a bill of $457, but as you say, he must have some other income.
Income tested, yes.
Is that right, caller?
Yes, I have what I've worked for all my life, yes.
In other words, what you're objecting to...
But I just don't like this canard about this, everybody getting $140.
Doesn't say everybody, sir.
It's everybody on a certain income test.
GIS, yes.
If you're without other funds, you get $140 a month over and above.
If you receive those two pensions, that would be the residue.
I'll do a detailed breakdown on that for you one of these days just to get it clear. Annie? Go ahead from Kamloops.
Hi. I'm just phoning because I don't like Mr. Nielsen's comment about the AIDS. I think that those people should be ostracized. My 13-year-old son was in the hospital 2 weeks ago with an operation, and I'm telling you, I was concerned because he had to have a blood transfusion. We try to live a decent moral life. Why should we be exposed to that kind of garbage?
Well, ma'am, everyone's concerned about it, but I mean, how do you ostracize a person who has a disease? I don't quite understand that.
She's talking about...
Did they do with people when they had, when they were lepers? They put them on an island somewhere and left them to be with themselves, and nobody else had to be exposed to it.
I appreciate that, but we have made some strides in medical care since leprosy was a common problem.
Right, but don't you think this AIDS thing is almost as serious?
AIDS is extremely serious. I think the attitude of the medical people and researchers and society is somewhat different than it was a couple of hundred years back when leper colonies were more common.
Ma'am, I can appreciate your fears. What you don't mean ostracize. What you mean is quarantine.
Yes.
That's what you mean.
Well,
Thanks.
it may occur.
What did you say?
It may occur if it's identified as being necessary.
Because there seems to be no finite answers yet about the specific transmissions of the disease at some levels.
Yeah, there's not a clear understanding of what the disease is.
Right. Go ahead, please.
Hey, I have difficulty with the concept of playing politics with medical care in this province. This province, regardless of what Mr. Nielsen says, is per capita is one of the poorest provinces for hospital and medical care in the country.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Money is put into high-profile projects, okay, and politics is played just like you said that everybody gets $140. I've seen it in the paper day after day concerning medical care. And here's where I have
wait a minute. What provinces are you comparing, sir?
Let's take Manitoba. Let's take Ontario.
No, just take Manitoba.
Let's take Manitoba.
Go ahead.
The difficulty that I have, and I'm repeating it, is that certainly our resources are finite, okay? But for you to take money and put it into other sectors of the economy...
No, wait a minute.
At the expense of health care, and it's happening in this
province. Hold on a second.
Speak to the doctors, ask them what they think of their hospital.
What are you talking about?
Tell me how Vancouver General as a hospital compares with Manitoba General Hospital or the St. Boniface Hospital. You tell me how we have problems with our hospitals as far as standards were concerned.
Hold on.
Are you an apologist for the NDP government in Manitoba, sir?
I'm not an apologist for the NDP government. I'm not NDP nor am I social credit. I am a person that is concerned here about medical care in the province, and we have a problem here.
What's the budget of the Vancouver General Hospital that bothers you?
I'm asking you about standards. Are you familiar with the standards for Vancouver General Hospital?
Vancouver General Hospital compares with any hospital in Canada.
I'm asking about the standards. Did they not have a problem 3 years ago or 5 years ago concerning the standards?
Standards of what?
Standards of care.
This is getting kind of pointless. Give me the usual dollar figures on Manitoba and BC and healthcare.
I don't know
that.
No, I don't know what he's comparing. The standards at Vancouver General Hospital are very high. To start with, no hospital would receive accreditation if they were not.
This is where we had a problem with accreditation here.
Not with the General Hospital,
sir.
You don't.
We had a problem a few years ago, Jack. You're not familiar with it, but we did have a problem.
Okay.
No, I think you're in error, sir.
We'll leave that one for the moment. I don't think you two will ever get together.
Jack, Vancouver General Hospital is one of the highest regarded hospitals in Canada.
Go ahead, please.
Yes. I'd like to know what Mr. Nielsen thinks of smoking by students within the school buildings in British Columbia.
I don't think it should be permitted.
Right.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Webster. I would like to talk to Mr. Nielsen about how good our medical care is compared to other provinces and to the states. In July, I had a baby born at Grace Hospital, and they give you a little thing of patient care costs. And it would have cost me $1,571.50 to have my baby there. And if I didn't have medical, with my medical plan, it only cost me $33. And my sister last year had a baby down in Mississippi, and by the time she was 7 months pregnant, she had to have the doctor paid $4,000 plus 1/3 of her hospital stay before she could even go in and have her baby. And I think we have excellent health care here. We have an excellent medical plan, and the people that are complaining don't realize how much it really does cost and how lucky we are. And I think we have to congratulate the people who run our hospitals and run our medical system, because we have one of the best going.
Thank you, ma'am.
Grace Hospital is also one of the best maternity hospitals anywhere.
Well, just thank God you don't live in the United States.
The medical care is good in the States, just very costly.
You can't afford it. The ordinary people don't have it.
They compare frequently the U.S. and Canada, or BC and California, whatever, but people don't fully appreciate the very high cost of hospital care in the U.S. I don't mean just to the individual, the actual cost per day of operation. In many instances, it's double what ours is.
And ours is high enough, God
knows. Ours is very high.
Go ahead, please.
Hello?
That's you, sir.
Oh, yes. Mr. Nielsen, I've had the misfortune in the last year to spend considerable time in the hospital with serious operations.
Yeah.
I noticed every time I went to the hospital, we had acute care beds that were plugged up with extended care patients. Why don't we build more extended care so the acute care beds would be released to people? I've waited 2 months for most operations that I had to go in to have.
Yeah, these were elective surgery, obviously.
Well, I was in a great deal of pain.
Yeah, but it was elective surgery. That's the decision of the physician as to when the operation may take place. But the extended care of interest to you, part of the criticism we discussed at the beginning of the program was my announcement of 150-bed extended care in Nanaimo, an extended care at 100 Mile House, extended care at Williams Lake.
Yes, I heard that.
And I agree with you. The emphasis on construction will be extended care as it was intermediate care the past few years and acute care before that.
One more short segment after the break. My apologies to you and the Minister. I've got other guests whom I must get on this morning, and the Minister kindly acceded to my request to wrap it up then and there. Now I've got Will Preston, Executive Director of the Arthritis Society of BC Centre, Peter McAllister, President of Health Labour Relations Association. And they're here because of this unusual issue whereby the Hospital Employees Union has launched some grievances on behalf of its members against volunteers at the Arthritis Centre facility in Vancouver. And their case is quite clear, and it will be in front of an arbitration board. But I want to get the broad volunteer picture, and I think I might get it from you first, Peter McAllister. How important are volunteers to the operations of British Columbia health facilities, and how long have they been used?
Well, desperately important, to answer briefly. They have been used since the inception of modern-day health care. In fact, many of our facilities, as I'm sure Mr. Preston will attest, have their fundamental foundation on volunteerism. In terms of the magnitude of the utilization of volunteers, the hospital auxiliary system alone in the province of British Columbia has over 10,000 volunteers that put in well over 1 million hours a year of volunteer service and raise over $2.5 million annually for the purchase of equipment.
Do they do work which should be covered by a union agreement? Are they doing union members' jobs? And I can understand why in these tight days of jobs that the unions would be properly aggrieved.
The volunteers have not put any union worker out of a job, quite simply.
What though if that volunteer is doing something that looks like a union job, like clerical work, in admitting or phoning people or whatnot?
There are some elements of that nature of work, but that work, don't forget, has been performed for years and years and years, Jack. These volunteers are perhaps working one day a week or so, providing some backup assistance that won't find its way into full-time
But volunteers do more than distribute candy bars and newspapers or run bake sales or raise money and drive patients, do they?
They do a number of things that are supportive of the full-time staff's functions.
All right, let's look with Mr. Preston at the situation the Arthritis Society finds itself in. Now, what could you do if you were in some way not allowed to use volunteers? What would happen to the Arthritis Society of BC?
Well, there would
in its care centres.
Yeah, there would be a reduction at our Vancouver and Victoria centres, which are our chief service centres in the province of patient care. Certainly, there would be no way, with the deficit that we run each year, that we could provide replace those volunteers with paid staff.
How many patient visits do you have a year for your arthritis treatment?
We have in the Vancouver and Victoria centres in excess of 40,000 patient visits a year.
Now, how many volunteers do you have province-wide?
We have in the area of 3,000 volunteers who do a variety of tasks. Many of those are once-a-year volunteers who contribute to the fundraising activities of the society, and they're spread throughout the province.
Well, if I were on the union side, I would say, look, we don't want to wipe out all your volunteers. We only want to wipe out your volunteers who are doing jobs which were any previously done by paid union people that are now done by volunteers?
No, Jack, there hasn't been any reduction of paid staff due to the volunteers that work at the Arthritis Society. We've always had an excellent relation, and we have a very dedicated and committed group of HU employees who work at the Arthritis Centre.
I'm told there are more than 200,000 volunteers in the province of British Columbia on a regular basis in all health facilities?
It could be. I couldn't confirm or deny that, but that doesn't strike me as being an unusual number, Jack.
Is this merely a kind of straw in the wind about the temper of insecurity that hospital employees and others have these days, and they don't want to see anyone sniping at possible jobs that could be filled on a paid basis?
I don't know. That's a difficult question to answer as to why this particular case came up when this work has been performed for 10, 20, 30 years at the Arthritis Society. It could well be a concern by a small group of people over job security, but certainly I think the concern is unfounded because there has not been any displacements due to the utilization of volunteers.
I mean, that's a fact.
And further, I think another fact is that if the volunteers are somehow limited in our healthcare facilities, then those jobs are not going to flow to full-time paid staff. Those jobs are simply not going to be performed. They're going to be spread amongst existing staff. And in the final analysis, the patient will suffer because the services provided to the patients will be reduced.
Well, how tough are your hospital budgets on additional staff these days, despite what the minister said?
Well, insofar as collective bargaining is concerned, we're at the bargaining table with 2 major unions now, and there is simply no money in the budgets for any increases to payroll during this fiscal year.
I don't know if this might... there's a good relationship just now between volunteers and staff in your centre, the one in Vancouver, for instance.
That's right.
This kind of thing might cause a little irritation one way or another.
Yes, there's no question about that, Jack.
So what would you say to volunteers now? Should they be concerned about it or just ignore the whole thing?
No, I would think that certainly we're concerned about it, but I would tend to set it aside because we believe that the issue is using the Arthritis Society to express their concern over the broader issue of volunteers across the province rather than our specific case.
You're the test case?
Yes.
And in your test case, I believe the claim is that 3 paid workers could 27 or 22 volunteers are doing work that could be done by 3 full-time paid workers.
Yes, those are the union's figures, not ours.
And you reject that?
Yes. The fact is that if we were to do away with the volunteers, we would not hire any union employees to replace them.
When will you get a decision on the arbitration?
Well, Don Monroe is the chairman of the arbitration board, and he had set aside originally 6 days, 4 of which we sat last week, and there are 2 more days, Thursday and Friday of this week, and we'll know at the end of this week how long the arbitration will go beyond that.
That must cost a fortune in itself, the arbitration.
Arbitration
what do these arbitrations cost these days?
Oh,
a couple of $1,000s a day?
At least that, probably
minimum.
A little bit more. Yeah.
Okay, have you any views on volunteers and their part in the hospital system? Do you think that they should be replaced with much smaller numbers of paid workers or vice versa? Let's take some calls to Peter McAllister. Are you in major negotiations now?
Yes, with the nurses and with the Hospital Employees Union.
And Will Preston, Executive Director of Arthritis Society, BC Centre.
All right.
Okay, Will Preston, not Bill Preston, Will Preston.
That's right.
I was going to call you Cars.
The Arthritis Society is...
Used to be Cars.
Used to be Cars, that's right.
And Peter McAllister, HLRA of BC. Go ahead, please.
I've been a volunteer in 2 different outfits in the East End. One is at the 411 Seniors Center.
Right.
And the other was the West End Community Center.
Not quite hospital work, but you did some good work, I suppose.
Yeah, but the thing is, in the interim, about a year and a half ago, I went across the bridge over to West 8th, and there's a sign up there. I don't know the name of the building, but you register as a volunteer, you see. Now, I went over and I spoke to a party over there in
what's the point of it?
And she put me down and asked me a bunch of questions.
Hold on, what's the point?
What categories I would like to, that I would be familiar with. So I listed different categories, that I'd be interested in. So she took all this down and said, okay, well,
oh, this is a United Way volunteer. Did they give you a job as a volunteer?
No, not right away, no.
Are you going to get one?
No, I already have one, but this is, like I said, this was in between times, you know.
Hold on, please. We won't get any calls on if he keeps talking. I'll go back to him later and mollify him. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I should say maintain the volunteers. Maintain the volunteers. We need them very badly in the hospital, and I say down with Jack Giroux.
Thank you. Go ahead from Trail, BC.
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
I work in a hospital, and I would like to express appreciation for volunteers coming in, because very often the patients, the nurses are overworked, as one lady stated earlier, and we don't often have time for everybody, and the volunteers are very helpful at times with keeping people company and just making them feel wanted.
Because they don't do any bed care of any kind, the volunteers, do they?
No. Even in the long-term care facilities where they take patients out on outings, they don't.
Bed care, no.
Thank you. Go ahead from Nanaimo.
Yes, I'm against volunteer labor in the hospitals. And as he said, even if the volunteers weren't there, they wouldn't hire. But they'd have to be forced to hire. Because if the volunteers weren't doing the work, somebody would have to. But volunteer labor is fine if it's in relation to just the patient, reading to them, keeping them company. But yes, I think healthcare has gone right down.
You think that anything involving clerical duties, admission or discharge,
should be a paid job, because this government would run this province on volunteer labor if he could.
That's a point for you, gentlemen.
The vast majority of volunteer work is in the area of patient support, but not direct patient care, but patient support. That's where the vast majority of it
Thank you for your view, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would just like to say that I think most medical facilities are founded on volunteer care, and I think that all this is applied by the unions to exercise their pipeline into the immigration to get more people in for votes in their unions.
Thank you, sir. One view. Go ahead, please.
Well, Jack, I've got 2 points. It seems that for many volunteers, the work itself is as vital for the volunteer as it is for the recipient, so it fulfills a need on both parts. And my second point is that it seems to me that well, I really don't understand why we should go to such expensive arbitration when it seems to be somewhat of a mercenary move on the part of the unions to try and expand their territory.
But the unions are entitled to go to arbitration because this is an apparent grievance, so they claim it is.
On the basis of the labor code, yes, they are entitled to grieve, and by the same token, I believe the healthcare institutions are entitled to utilize volunteers, and that's the position we're taking at the arbitration.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, I work at an extended care hospital in the Lower Mainland, and we used to have activity aides, which were union members of the HEU. And we have no longer got them. Now, we do have volunteers, and the volunteers are excellent. But since we've lost the activity aids, we've lost, the girls don't work on the one-to-one with the residents. There's no validation or reality orientation. The girls used to do the range of motion exercises. They used to have dressing programs. They used to have personal care programs. We used to have pub nights, games, sing-alongs, and crafts. We don't have that anymore. And I think it's the residents of the extended care home that are suffering.
You're talking about staff cuts. Is she not talking about staff cuts?
Yes, that's the way I interpret it.
Are you talking about an extended care hospital?
We had some staff cuts because the activity aides were replaced with volunteer workers.
I see. Which hospital?
Richmond General Hospital.
Richmond General Hospital.
Main ECU.
Is that one of the grievances by any chance, Peter?
No, it's not. I haven't heard any. We've had isolated complaints across the province, but they've been held to a local level, and I've heard nothing coming out of, certainly nothing coming out of Richmond.
How long since the activity workers were cut off?
Just over a year ago.
And the volunteers can't do the same job?
Well, we don't get any volunteers in the evening, so there goes your pub nights, your sing-alongs, your crafts. Range of motion should be done first thing in the morning. Well, the volunteers...
Okay, question. Do volunteers not work nights?
Yes, our volunteers work nights. Some of them work nights.
Good point, ma'am, and a good call. Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Jay.
Morning.
Just one question for you. With this arbitration going on at the moment, is this going to affect all volunteers, other than in the hospitals as well?
Peter?
Certainly, the position that we will take is that this is an issue isolated to the Arthritis Society. However, I've never known a union yet to not attempt to use a favorable arbitration award in other areas, and I think it transgresses the healthcare sector into other sectors of the society.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just came out of the hospital, and even if they were fully staffed, the volunteers, I think, lift the morale of the patients. The regular staff nurses do not have time to go ahead and be jolly and play around or give you a back rub and things of that sort, even under regular circumstances. Volunteers, I think, are absolutely necessary to do the odds and ends things that the nurses don't have time to do.
Fair enough, but they're not actually complaining about the bedside cheating up the nurses, the hospital employees union, are they?
Well, they've in this particular arbitration, they've given every indication to sweep a number of other duties aside from the clerical duties under the jurisdiction of this particular arbitration panel. So they've broadened the scope quite a bit.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, Jack. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I was last year in a general twice, and I was in acute care because there was no other bed. These old people there, they had nothing to read. They had nobody with them. I could walk. I went for them downstairs. There was a little shop run by a blind man. This year, I was in UBC, and if they forget to bring you your lunch or haven't got you on the fire, then there is just no lunch. And when we saw the volunteers coming by with potato chips and books or dental care or anything, we were happy. We need the volunteers. The nurses are overworked. They run half an hour around to find a razor if you need an operation. We need them very, very badly.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a cry from the heart. Well, we'll wait and see what happens at the arbitration. And my thanks to Will Preston, the Arthritis Society, and to Peter McAllister of Health and Labour Relations Association of BC.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Next, you're going to meet a couple of strange people after the break. There's only one way to get on the Webster program. That's to convince me it's an item worthy of reporting to the public. But sometimes I meet such people who are such persistent pests that I give in. This couple came in to see me the other day. Charming young woman, Lorna Hancock, mother of three. Seems quite normal in every way, shape, or form. And Harvey Ashman, how old?
60, close, 1 week,
God,
60.
You look older than that.
I know, I used to.
Just a minute. He used to be a 350-pound fat slob. He has conquered all his health problems, and these two come in and they absolutely nag me into the ground to tell people about their Health Action Network Society. And I spent 20 minutes with you the other day, and I had no idea what you were talking about. And you can try, if you're interesting, I'll keep you for a few minutes. If you're not, I'll ask you to get out. Who's going to start?
Well,
the former fat slob.
Well, Jack, if I should start then, I would say one thing first of all. I wasn't 360 pounds, but I was 223 pounds a few years ago, and I've lost 60 pounds. And I feel just like a 23-year-old, and age is only a number to me anymore.
And you weren't overweight.
No.
You were always physically perfect.
I'm not sure about that, but...
All right, what is this Health Action Network Society? How many members do you have?
We have 650.
Your holistic
In good
medicine?
standing. Not necessarily, but we were provincially registered in July of 1984. We have an active membership. Our membership is devoted to certain purposes, and I'd like to refer to those briefly.
It's awful dull.
No, it's not dull. It's very exciting.
Listen to this
It
nonsense.
proposes solutions that were offered
To
earlier.
investigate, examine, compare, and research all methods, types, and systems of preventive health care and natural therapeutics. You're weird.
Can I expand on that for just a second?
To serve as an educational and non-profit organization. To contact, inform, and exchange research studies with all interested healthcare professionals. We are no different from any other fitness society.
We're interested in research, Jack, and Harvey is a practical example of how someone can help themselves.
You did all the talking the other day. Do it now.
Well, all right, I'll come up with a couple. And one of the things is, Jack, that 4.5 years ago, the medical profession, and I am not down on that, there is no way that any of us can live without the medical doctors, believe me. Because I tell you, I owe my life to them. I'm not backing off. I'm explaining to you exactly why I have done what I have done.
What have you done?
I got to a point where I've had to completely, that's right, and I've had to completely change my whole way of life, and I have done that, and I am most pleased that I have. As I said, it was 223 pounds. I have I've quit eating meat, red meat. I have quit eating sugar, salt. I have quit taking caffeine. I have quit the alcohol. I used to be a good Scotch drinker, just like some others that I do know. And I have quit those things, and I have turned my life around, and I'm telling you that I feel most healthy now.
You've only done what thousands of other intelligent, sensible people have done.
I am saying it because I would like to, we as the Health Action Network Society would like to see the whole world do this, and I can tell you something else, that we would cut the cost of health care in the province of British Columbia by millions, and I say millions of dollars, for the simple reason that back when I was into the health or the sickness program, as I call it, everyone else calls it health care, I call it sickness care, that was costing about $3,000 a year for the government to look after me, and I have cut that down now to a point where in 1984 the government actually spent, and I have these figures, $89.92 for the whole year.
So what have you told me?
I have told you that
I'll tell you what you've told me. You've told me that you, after leading a very bad lifestyle, you came to your senses, followed the Pritikin diet, stopped smoking, stopped drinking, stopped caffeine, began to walk, and you're fit.
Exercising.
So you think you're something unusual?
I am. So there's a lot more of them out there that are not
But you had enough
healthy.
peace of mind and money and sufficiently good social circumstances so you were able to do that. If you'd been in welfare with 4 kids and a drunken husband, you wouldn't have been able to do that.
No. Even a welfare recipient can do this. Anyone can do it.
What did you say? No, you can't. People on welfare cannot pick and choose what they're going to eat, and they can't always eat the best things.
They certainly can't under some situations, no. But let me explain one thing to you. Since I started into this dieting program that I'm on, Jack, I have cut my food costs by a minimum of 55%.
But so there's nothing unusual about you.
Yes, there is. The unusual part is that I'm still alive, and according to the medical profession, I should be dead.
Well, you managed a program of personal discipline.
Absolutely.
And that's all you've got. You've got nothing else, have you?
Jack, there are people in this society that are interested in different options, systems of therapeutics,
everything he says is perfectly correct, but why form a society for it?
To teach other people.
Okay, you carry on.
Yes. Well, in England
I'm
now,
not being fair to you, but
you're doing fine. But the Institute for Complementary Medicine in England offers a valuable service to the public, and it's not for people that are not interested in their own health. It's people that want to make a stand, want to make changes to their lives. Now, where do they reach out for that information? Where do they reach out for the research? For example, the Pritikin program. Where do you go when you decide that you want to make changes to your life? There have to be these kinds of services available.
So you're going to be a research service.
That is what we're looking at right now. We have PhD
Does
consultants.
anybody have to pay to join your society?
There's a $15 a year membership fee. The member is qualified to receive a quarterly magazine.
Called Option?
Called Option.
Who publishes this?
We do.
What do you mean we? We in Vancouver?
We, myself, I'm one of the key people in this magazine.
Acupuncture.
We're interested in all aspects of complementary health care, and that's a term coined by England primarily, but it refers to systems like acupuncture and reflexology and shiatsu and the non-drug approaches to healthcare. We would like to see those incorporated in our healthcare system. Acupuncture, herbal treatment? Why not?
You've got no fancy cures for cancer, I trust.
I personally don't, but if they have been told that they have 2 months to live, I'm sure that people would be looking for alternatives.
Try anything, agreed. Try anything at all.
So we're interested in providing that in a research way.
Oh, I didn't realize you'd actually produced a magazine. Oh, here we are. Here's what you do.
Homeopathy.
What's homeopathy?
The Queen's physician is a homeopathic physician. Homeopathy is widespread in
A lot of
England.
people around the Queen, I'll tell you. Herbology.
What about herbology?
What's herbology?
The use of herbs. The basis of conventional medicine today is the use of herbs. They've extracted those primary ingredients from herbs.
Holistic health.
Yes.
Iridology. What is iridology?
Iridology is the analysis of the iris of the eye. Heretofore considered unscientific. No, I'm not going to look in your eyes, Jack. I think they're charming, but I'm not an iridologist. But out of curiosity, I went and I saw some of these people and I experimented. I didn't like being told that they were all quacks.
Reflexology.
Reflexology, many people
Is that
get
the
treatment.
big toe? Is that
That's the massage of the feet. And it corresponds to acupuncture, which is reflex points.
Actually, I should be fair to you. I mean, you're a bit of a zealot, I must confess. And zealots tend to get under my skin. Because all you have personally done is remake your life, and you're now a fit 60-year-old instead of a highly unfit cost to society.
Excuse me, Jack, he forgot to mention, and I don't think he noticed, but 5 years ago, he was given what he calls a death sentence. He was told he had a few months to live, and his surgeon said, I can't operate on you.
You have formed the Health Action Network Society in British Columbia.
Yes.
It's $15 to join it.
Yes, $15.
You tell people about all the the healthcare options. You publish a magazine called Option. How often do you publish it?
Quarterly.
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 And I think you're wonderful. One last one from you. And you.
We are doing research on a center. We are doing this is an exciting possibility for the province, and I think a big solution to a lot of people's problems. Research, research, research. But let's take a look at a new, fresh approach to healthcare. Let's concentrate our research on the preventive aspects of healthcare and go into all those systems of therapeutics, both preventive and the natural therapeutics, the complementary medicines.
I'm going to go back on the print again. I slipped a little bit.
I think you should, Jack. This is very, very important to you. And I tell you, you'd be feeling much better and you wouldn't be as ugly as you are. You know? You wouldn't be able to shoot me down the way you try.
I told you that I said I'll put you on if I've got a spare few minutes.
Yeah, and you did, and I'm very, very appreciative.
What's your phone number for your society?
437
437-4008. We'll give it out to anybody who phones. How's that?
Great. We have some exciting plans for the new year, and we're going to be around to tell you all about them, Jack.
Thank you very much indeed.
You actually should belong to Option. You should belong to our society.
Will you stop bullying me, please?
What I would do is see to it that you got better to spite yourself.
Free for all after the break. Free for all after the break. Well, I see that David Crombie, the Indian Affairs Minister, has injected himself while in Vancouver into the South Moresby as a wilderness area to protect the Haida Indians' interest. That's fine, that's good. But he did say, and let's remind him of it, there is an understanding that there has to be an accommodation of other interests. I don't deny the Haida interest in the park, but it's the other interests that matter for the moment in British Columbia. We mustn't be panicked by these people with all the millions to spend on Globe and Mail ads. Would you raise the pyramids? R-A-Z-E, the pyramids. Free for all. Not a bad program this morning. Not bad. Nielsen was very good, very forthright on all the issues, AIDS and other ones. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack. Is this Crombie, the Minister of Indian Affairs, he's also announcing that the Indians, some tribes are going to become self-sufficient. Is that true?
I heard them say something. I heard something about that.
Would they be incorporated like a municipality and run their own affairs, and they would be no longer a burden on the taxpayer then?
Oh, there's no cessation of federal funds to Indians yet, but there is talk over on the Gibson Seychelles Peninsula.
Well, that's one of them, and there's another one up in the interior, and then one down east. But I think this is a great thing if that's what they want. I mean, give it to them, but, you know, they just can't keep standing there with their hands out.
I agree with you, and thank you very much for your call.
Thank you.
Bye. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I'm a tourist from Scotland.
Oh, my God. How did you get into the
I'd like to ask you why there is discrimination on the Scottish pound note against the English pound note. We get less, 12% less, 12 cents less than the pound.
Are you talking about transactions in Canada or in Scotland?
Yes, in Canada. I'm a visitor here just now.
And you mean to say they're discriminating against Scottish pound notes and giving you £12 less than they give you for an
12
English?
cents less on the pound and the Scottish pound.
What's the rate for an English pound?
Pardon?
What's the rate for an English pound?
12 cents less than we get for the Scottish pound.
That's utterly damnable.
That's not half.
Where are you from in Scotland?
Pardon?
Where are you from?
Shettleston, Springboy, Glasgow.
Well, nice to meet you. I used to come from there myself.
Very good. And what do you think about the question?
I couldn't care less.
Couldn't care less.
And give Glasgow my regards.
I think that's ridiculous.
So do I. I think it's absolutely diabolical. It's diabolical. And I'll take it up right now. Any damn bank that takes 12 cents off a Scottish pound note will not get my business.
Thank you very much.
Which bank was it? Which bank?
Which bank? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. Don't know the name. Thank you.
He's a bright tourist. I hope he can manage to see the mountains. Okay, boy, thanks. Oh, God, spare me from Scotch tourists. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning, ma'am.
I was wondering, those people that you just had on, why you didn't question them about the statistics. They're published by the Canadian Department of Health and the U.S. Department of Health that say that all weight loss diets have a 5-year 98% failure rate.
You know it, and I know it. How are you doing on your overweight?
I'm not overweight, I'm fat.
How fat?
Oh, I'm way about what that fellow used to weigh. He doesn't look like he's much under that now.
But look at the lovely timbre it gives to your voice because of your large chest cavity.
That and my smoking.
I like you. Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yes.
Sorry to bore you with Bennett, but I want to hear you on air say whether you think he's going to win or lose the next election.
Well, as of this moment, with the disarray of the NDP, and despite the poor calibre of social credit backbenchers, I think he has a better than even chance of squeaking in.
As a student, that really scares me.
Well, get out and work for some sane party if you can find one. Williams Lake.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning, sir.
I'm calling a little late. I couldn't get through to the health minister, but I'm one of 814 Canadians who are veterans from Vietnam.
Right.
And unfortunately, I suffered an injury when I was over there. But I'm not recognized by the Veterans Affairs in Canada. And unfortunately, because I am Canadian and I'm back here in Canada, I'm no longer accepted by the American government either. And I was just wondering if somebody who has any knowledge of what can be done about this could probably contact your show. Maybe have someone from the Department of Veterans Affairs on your show someday and explain this to us. I'll let you go now and you can explain it.
In other words, you're saying, is there any treatment for a Canadian citizen who was a Vietnam vet who has chosen to leave the United States where he can get treatment and now wants it from the Canadian government, which was not involved?
That's right. Well, see, we're not even recognized as veterans.
Well, get your name off the air. Hold on, will you, please? Don't go away. Hold. Good morning.
Yes, I just wanted to remind you about the volunteers, that some people, elderly people in the hospital, don't have families, and they're their only...
Contact with humanity.
That's right.
Agree with you entirely, sir. Wrong one. Go ahead, please.
Hi. Concerning the ambulance service, I was just wondering, I would have liked to caught the minister earlier, but just to let the people know that there are part-time ambulance attendants working in this city now. Full-time ambulance attendants taking shifts off are now working. Their shifts are being covered by part-time ambulance people.
Is this staffing economies?
Yeah, it's a way to cut back on restraints. It's a lot cheaper, but the standard of care for the patient has been cut down.
Part-time ambulance attendants now working out of the various centres, and thanks for the information. Go ahead, please.
Webster, you're doing a fine job.
Oh?
I'm worrying about is we've got people in the hospitals in Vancouver. It's costing us a fortune to keep them in on dialysis and all that. We haven't heard anything more on this, and last time I heard it was $350,000. What's going on?
You're talking about the immigrant from Fiji who can only live without a dialysis system and who has refused a portable dialysis unit to take back to Fiji with them.
Right.
We're stuck with it. It'll cost us millions.
Oh, shame. When are you going to get on the evening show so the workers can possibly see you?
You think I'm going to work night shift for your benefit? Go away. Night shift at my age. The permanent night shift will be along one of these years. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. I take it back. But considering the option, this is better. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Yes, Jack?
Yeah.
Jack, in all that talk about the forestry business there, those islands, you didn't seem to emphasize the fact that this is a renewable thing.
I'm telling you, the logging that took place 60 years ago on the east coast of Moresby cannot be differentiated from the old original forests as of this moment.
That's what I mean, Jack. You know, the renewable stuff and all this fuss about recreation and beauty and all the rest of it, when we get all this unemployment. You didn't seem to emphasize that.
Well, you know, I'm treading a little softly on some things, but the logging that would take place would be half of 1% of the TFL for 45 years. Properly done, you wouldn't even know it, and it'd still have 450 square miles for the bleeding park.
Countries in different parts of the world that don't have our trees, our volume of trees, they've got this renewable stuff going time and time and time again. It doesn't ruin anything.
Thank you. God bless you. I got to go. I'll be back after the break. Tomorrow we're going to have Peter Pearce, our old professorial friend, the expert in all kinds of royal commissions, forestry and whatnot. Tomorrow it's water, Canada's water resources. And we're going to have a guy from Toronto who's quite bright called Roman, who's the head of the Public Interest Advocacy Centre. I think it's a tax-supported organisation for nagging at the government. We do it for nothing without any tax support. But we'll see what Andrew Roman has to say. And we'll follow Lyle Island tomorrow at 9 a.m. precisely. Peter Pearce Pierces Our Water Problems with Webster at 9 a.m. precisely.